There are moments in your evolution when silence becomes more powerful than speech. Not because words lose their meaning, but because language cannot hold the weight of what you've become. There is a stage in every spiritual transformation when your inner world begins to expand beyond explanation, and the temptation to share it, to validate it, becomes almost irresistible. Yet this is where the sacred demands your stillness. The early phases of awakening often bring revelation patterns dissolve, identities crumble, illusions break apart, and something ancient within you starts to whisper the truth of who you really are. It's intoxicating. You feel alive in a way you never did before. You see through the mask people wear, through the noise of society, through the lies your own mind once believed. And naturally, you want to speak. You want to tell someone, anyone, that you found something real. But that urge to announce what is still being born within you is the first test. Because the sacred isn't meant to be performed, it's meant to be lived. When you speak of what you have not yet fully integrated, you weaken its energy. What was meant to take root in your soul begins to drift into the world of opinions, comparisons, and misunderstanding. The seed that was growing in secret now lies exposed to judgment, and judgment is poison to the sacred. There is a reason why ancient mystics withdrew into solitude after experiencing enlightenment. Not because they despised the world, but because they understood the fragility of transformation. The sacred needs darkness before it can face the light. Just as a seed must remain buried before it can sprout, your new self must remain hidden until it has grown strong enough to withstand the gaze of others. In the silence of your own becoming, you will face discomfort. You will feel unseen. You will question whether your progress is even real. But that uncertainty is also holy. It keeps you honest. It prevents the ego from hijacking your awakening and turning it into a story about superiority. Silence strips away performance and forces you to rely on truth rather than approval. When you share your spiritual insights too early, you risk feeding the very thing you're trying to dissolve, the ego. The ego is subtle. It doesn't always appear as arrogance or pride. Sometimes it shows up as the innocent desire to help others understand what you've learned. But if that help is driven by the need to be seen as awakened, then it isn't service. It's self-preservation dressed as virtue. Silence keeps you aware of this trap. There are moments when silence becomes your greatest teacher. In stillness, you begin to see how every word can either honor or dilute your transformation. You realize that not all knowledge was meant to be shared. Some truths are not lessons for others, they are medicine for you. They must dissolve within you before they can ever heal anyone else. The sacred doesn't need witnesses. It doesn't crave validation. It thrives in the dark, in the places where your human voice cannot reach. When you remain silent, you give permission for the divine to keep working through you, unobserved, uninterrupted. That silence becomes your protection, your teacher, your initiation. It's easy to underestimate how fragile sacred energy is when it first awakens. You may feel clear, radiant, unstoppable, but the outer world is loud, filled with distractions, opinions, and projections. The moment you try to explain what's unfolding within you, you open yourself to that noise. What was once a pure current of inner knowing becomes a concept for others to analyze, question, or dismiss. In their misunderstanding, you might begin to doubt your own truth. The sacred must remain silent, not because it's fragile, but because it's sacred. Silence is the container that keeps it from being reduced to something ordinary. When you guard your awakening with silence, you give it time to mature. You allow your spirit to stabilize before exposing it to the world's energy. Eventually, there will come a time when your silence will no longer feel like withholding. It will feel like peace. You will no longer feel the need to explain, to prove, to teach. The truth will live through your presence rather than your words. People will sense something different about you without you ever saying a thing. That is the mark of real transformation. When your energy speaks louder than your mouth, you will understand why silence was necessary all along. The sacred reveals itself not through your explanations, but through the way you carry what cannot be spoken. There is a deep ache that comes with awakening, the desire to be understood. When you begin to see the world differently, when your thoughts and emotions start aligning with a higher awareness, the first instinct is often to share. You want others to see what you see, to feel what you felt, to understand the freedom that has started unfolding within you. But the truth is not meant for every ear. Not because it is too good to share, but because not every consciousness can yet receive it. Your truth is sacred currency. It carries energy, history, and transformation. When you speak it to someone who cannot hold it, that energy dissipates. It's like pouring fine wine into a cracked cup. It leaks, it stains, and it is wasted. There are people who will listen only to respond, not to understand. People whose wounds are still too deep to recognize healing when they hear it. People who mistake your clarity for arrogance, your discernment for judgment, and your peace for distance. It's not that they are evil or malicious. They simply haven't reached the frequency where your words can land. Truth is a vibration. It cannot be forced into a heart that's still closed by pain, denial, or ego. When you share your spiritual insights with those who haven't yet met themselves, they won't meet you either. They will react from their own shadows, doubting, dismissing, or even mocking the very awareness that could liberate them. There's a quiet strength in recognizing that you don't owe your truth to everyone. The soul's evolution demands discernment, not secrecy born of fear, but wisdom born of experience. You begin to understand that your truth, though universal, is intimate. It's a living, breathing force that must be protected until it finds the right soil to grow in. Think of the times you've spoken from your heart only to be met with blank stares or uncomfortable silence. Think of the moments when your honesty was twisted into something you never meant. Those experiences weren't failures of communication. They were lessons in alignment. They were reminders that not every space can hold your expansion. The awakened self must learn the art of quiet revelation. You don't need to announce your growth to prove its existence. In fact, the more you evolve, the less you'll feel the need to explain yourself. The truth that once demanded expression begins to express itself through your being. Your energy becomes your statement. Your peace becomes your message. And those who are meant to understand will feel it without you uttering a word. But before you reach that stillness, there will be times of frustration. You'll want to help people see what you see. You'll want to wake them up from their illusions. You'll want to save them from the very pain you once lived in. Yet in doing so, you'll learn that enlightenment cannot be given. It must be earned. You can plant seeds, but you cannot force them to bloom. You can share wisdom, but you cannot make someone ready to receive it. There's also another layer to this truth. Some will resist your awakening because your evolution threatens their comfort. When you start breaking your patterns, it forces others to confront their own stagnation. Your growth mirrors their limitations, and instead of being inspired, they feel exposed. So they project, they belittle, they withdraw. It's not your job to correct their perception. Your only task is to protect your peace. Not every conversation is meant to be a revelation. Not every listener is meant to understand your language. The wise learn to discern the difference between those who seek truth and those who seek validation. You will begin to recognize who can hold sacred space for your vulnerability and who cannot. You'll stop trying to convince and start conserving your energy. True understanding happens in silence between souls who are ready. When you speak your truth to those who are aligned, it will feel effortless. There will be resonance, not resistance. There will be peace, not defense. You'll realize that you never had to convince anyone. You only had to wait until your vibration attracted those who could hear you. Every word you share carries your frequency. Protect it. Every silence you choose carries your wisdom. Honor it. The world may not always be ready for your truth, but your truth will always be ready for the right world. One of the most deceptive traps on the path of spiritual growth is the subtle urge to prove that you are evolving. You begin to feel lighter, more aware, more at peace. And suddenly, there's a quiet impulse within you that wants to make it known. You want others to see that you've changed, that you're no longer the same person who once reacted, suffered, or chased validation. You tell yourself it's harmless, even inspiring, but hidden beneath that desire to announce your progress is the old self, dressed in new spiritual clothing, whispering, "Look at me evolve." The ego is clever. It doesn't vanish the moment you awaken. It adapts. It learns the language of your growth, mimics the tone of your healing, and disguises itself as enlightenment. It can make you believe that your self-awareness exempts you from the very shadows you're trying to integrate. The ego loves progress because progress can be used as proof that you're special, that you've transcended, that you're different now. But the more you try to show your evolution, the more it becomes performance rather than embodiment. True transformation doesn't need an audience. The moment you seek validation for your awakening, it stops being awakening and becomes achievement. The ego thrives on measurement. It wants to know how far you've come, how much you've healed, how your growth compares to others. But spirituality doesn't work on timelines or milestones. It unfolds in layers, not levels. It's not about being better than who you were yesterday, but being more real in every moment that comes. The danger lies in the ego's ability to hijack your progress. You start doing things not because they align with your soul, but because they fit the image of what a healed person should look like. You avoid anger because it doesn't seem spiritual. You suppress pain because it feels like regression. You post insights not because they flow naturally, but because they validate your identity as someone who's awakened. Slowly, your healing becomes a performance, and the audience becomes your source of power. But awareness is not for display. It's for integration. The more you need to announce your growth, the less you've actually embodied it. Because the truth of awakening is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It moves silently through your habits, your choices, your presence. It shows up in how you respond when no one is watching. It reveals itself in your patience with others, in your compassion for yourself, in your ability to sit with discomfort without needing to explain it away. When you feel the urge to prove how evolved you are, pause and ask yourself, who is speaking right now? The soul doesn't need validation, it needs truth. The ego, however, feeds on attention. It wants recognition for its progress. It wants applause for its humility. It wants to be known as the one who has transcended the need to be known. And that is its most ironic disguise, pretending to be enlightened while secretly craving confirmation that it is. The process of genuine spiritual growth will humble you again and again. Just when you think you've transcended the ego, it will find a new costume. It will whisper that you're more awakened than those around you, that you've reached a level of understanding others can't yet comprehend. And in that moment, you'll realize that the ego hasn't died. It's simply evolved with you. That realization is not failure. It's part of the path, because seeing the ego in disguise is itself an act of awakening. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging your progress. But there's a vast difference between acknowledgement and announcement. Acknowledgement is silent gratitude, a quiet knowing that you've grown, that you're no longer who you used to be. Announcement is an unconscious plea for validation, a need for others to confirm that your evolution is real. The first deepens your connection to self. The second strengthens your attachment to image. Spiritual maturity means learning to grow without making noise. It means allowing your evolution to be witnessed not through words, but through energy. People will feel your transformation long before they hear it. Your peace will speak for you. Your calm will reveal what your ego cannot. And in that silence, something sacred happens. Your progress becomes pure again, uncorrupted by the need to be seen. The ego will always want to announce your progress because it fears invisibility. It equates silence with insignificance. But the soul knows better. The soul grows quietly, unseen, like roots beneath the earth. It doesn't need to prove its depth to the forest above. It knows that the deeper it goes in silence, the stronger it becomes. There comes a point in every person's evolution when the energy of your presence begins to shift. You start to walk differently, think differently, speak differently. You no longer participate in chaos. You no longer chase validation. You no longer feed the wounds that once defined you. But as you rise into your light, you will notice something unsettling. Not everyone will celebrate it. Some will resist it. Some will question it. And some will even turn your light against you. When you begin to heal, you disrupt the unhealed dynamics around you. The energy that once kept certain relationships, conversations, and connections alive starts to dissolve. The people who once felt comfortable around your brokenness will now feel uneasy around your strength. They were familiar with your wounds because your pain matched theirs. But your peace, your self-respect, your boundaries, that unsettles them. Healing changes the language of your soul, and not everyone will be fluent in it. The unhealed often respond to light with projection. They see in you what they refuse to see in themselves. Your calm exposes their chaos. Your clarity reveals their confusion. Your detachment reminds them of their dependency. And rather than face their own discomfort, they aim it at you. They call you distant, cold, arrogant. or too spiritual. They mistake your silence for superiority, when in truth it is simply protection. Your light becomes their mirror. And not everyone wants to look. It reflects the parts of them that remain unacknowledged, the wounds they've avoided, the patterns they still defend. When you rise, they interpret it as rejection. When you hold boundaries, they call it betrayal. When you no longer participate in their drama, they say you've changed. And they're right, you have, but they can only see that change through the lens of their pain. What many don't understand is that your evolution is not an attack. You are not rejecting anyone by becoming whole. You are simply moving from survival to truth. Yet to those still surviving, your healing feels like abandonment. Your strength reminds them of the freedom they've been afraid to claim. So instead of rising with you, they pull you back, consciously or not, into the old versions of yourself. It's not uncommon for the unhealed to manipulate your empathy. They know your heart, your compassion, your sensitivity. They know how deeply you feel and how much you value connection. So when your light threatens their control, they weaponize your goodness. They use guilt, shame, or nostalgia to keep you small. They'll remind you of who's to be, or accuse you of thinking you're better than others. But this is not about you. It's about their fear of losing the dynamic that once made them comfortable. Spiritual growth exposes everything that was built on illusion. When you become conscious, manipulation no longer works on you. Emotional games no longer seduce you. Chaos no longer fascinates you. You stop engaging with pain as an identity, and that terrifies those who still do. Because once you refuse to participate in dysfunction, you become unpredictable to those who feed on it. This is why discernment becomes essential on the healing path. Not everyone is ready to witness your light without trying to dim it. Some will want access to your energy, but not accountability for their own. They will take your kindness as weakness and your forgiveness as permission. But true compassion has boundaries. It knows the difference between helping someone heal and allowing them to harm. Your growth will often be misunderstood because it threatens the equilibrium of others' unhealed selves. You can't expect understanding from those who haven't yet met their own shadows, and you can't explain awakening to those who still find safety in denial. The unhealed will twist your words, question your intentions, and at times make you doubt your progress. But their perception is not your truth. It is their defense mechanism against their own awakening. The deeper you step into your light, the more you'll see that not everyone can come with you. You'll lose people you never thought you'd lose, not because you've done something wrong, but because your vibration no longer aligns with the frequency of their pain. You'll start to see that love, without awareness, is often attachment disguised as care, and that not every bond deserves preservation if it demands your self-betrayal. In the end, your light will reveal who truly stands with you and who only stood with your wounds. Those who are meant to grow with you will be inspired by your transformation. They will face their own shadows instead of projecting them onto you. The rest will resist, distort, or withdraw, not because your light harms them, but because it reminds them of the light they've forgotten within themselves. There's a kind of strength that doesn't announce itself, a power that doesn't need applause, attention, or recognition. It lives in stillness, it moves in silence. It grows in the unseen spaces where no one is watching. Real power doesn't come from noise, dominance, or display. It comes from alignment. From the moments when you choose presence over reaction, truth over validation, and peace over performance, when you begin to awaken, it's tempting to express everything you're learning. You want to share your insights, your growth, your breakthroughs. You want to tell the world that you're not the person you once were. But real evolution is not a spectacle. It's a process. The truest transformation often happens quietly beneath the surface of your daily life. It's not in what you say, but in what you stop saying. Not in what you show, but in what you no longer need to show. The quiet stages of growth are where strength is born. They are not glamorous. They are not loud. They are the nights when you sit with your pain instead of distracting yourself from it. The mornings when you choose discipline over comfort. The conversations you walk away from instead of defending your worth. The moments you forgive, not because someone deserves it, but because you refuse to carry the weight any longer. These invisible choices are what build real power. The world glorifies visibility, being seen, being heard, being known. But spiritual maturity teaches you that true influence comes from presence, not performance. You start to realize that the most powerful people are often the ones who say the least. They don't need to broadcast their wisdom, they embody it. Their energy speaks where their words once did. Their calmness disarms chaos without confrontation. Their stillness communicates what explanation never could. Quiet power is not passive. It's not about withdrawal or avoidance. It's about containment. It's about having access to immense energy and choosing to use it with precision. It's knowing that reaction wastes energy, but awareness channels it. It's the ability to remain centered while the world around you shakes. That calmness is not emptiness, it's mastery. When you stop needing to prove your strength, you step into your real power. The ego thrives on validation. It wants the world to know how far you've come, how much you've healed, how enlightened you've become. But the soul doesn't need witnesses. It knows its growth without needing confirmation. The quieter your energy becomes, the more powerful it is, because it no longer leaks through the need to be seen. Silence becomes your sanctuary. You stop defending your peace. You stop explaining your choices. You stop arguing for your limitations. Instead, you observe. You allow. You hold your energy close, not out of fear, but out of respect for what you've built within. You realize that sacred things grow best in stillness. Love, intuition, clarity, and faith, all of them deepen when they're not constantly exposed to noise. The greatest transformations happen when no one is watching. The breakthroughs that truly change you are rarely witnessed by others. They happen in the solitude of your healing, in the private battles you fight when no one believes in you. Real power is forged in those moments of inner confrontation, when you choose growth over comfort, awareness over reaction, authenticity over approval. That's where your strength is tested, shaped, and refined. Quiet power doesn't rush to prove itself. It doesn't compete. It doesn't seek to dominate. It simply is. It moves with certainty, not arrogance. It knows that truth doesn't need to shout to be heard. It trusts timing. It trusts flow. It trusts that what is real will never need to be forced. As you continue to evolve, you'll find yourself drawn to the still places, the pauses between actions, the silences between words. That's where your energy recalibrates. That's where your intuition speaks. That's where you begin to understand that silence isn't emptiness, it's fullness contained. You'll notice how your power no longer depends on recognition, how your peace no longer depends on control, how your worth no longer depends on being understood. The more you mature spiritually, the less you feel compelled to speak about it, because real power doesn't need to be announced. It needs to be embodied. The quiet ones are not weak, they are anchored. They've learned that energy wasted on noise is energy stolen from transformation. They've discovered that the deepest shifts happen not when the world applauds, but when the soul aligns. Real power doesn't roar, it resonates. It doesn't seek attention, it attracts alignment. It doesn't chase validation, it radiates authenticity. The quieter you become, the more your energy speaks for you. And that's when you finally understand that silence was never the absence of power, it was its birthplace.